Good morning, friends. I'm going to create a quick video in regards to the activities that have been going on in my life since mid-November of last year. Towards the end of October, I started experiencing some shoulder pain in my upper left torso. It just kept getting worse and worse to where I was losing mobility of my left arm. I did continue to go to work and I tried to maintain my job. I did have help from my peers in regards to lifting things and that sort of thing when it got bad. But in mid-November, I was getting up in the middle of the night one night to go to the restroom. And in the process of getting out of bed, I used my left arm to prop my body up to twist to get out of bed. And I heard a crack in my upper left arm. And extreme pain followed it as well. And so I was sleeping in another room. And so I went and got my wife, Darla, up out of bed. And she brought me to the emergency room. And they took an x-ray and saw that I did fracture my humerus in my left shoulder. However, they said there's more wrong with me than just the fractured humerus. And so they told me that they suspected I had cancer. And so they put on a table and did a CT scan and found out that, yes, I did have cancer. And they admitted me into the hospital. And the CT scan revealed that I had a tumor roughly the size of a golf ball in my T6 vertebrae in my upper back. I was hospitalized for nearly 10 days, at which time, at the end of that stay, they had finally performed the surgery to remove the tumor and fuse my T4 to T5 and T7 to T8 vertebrae together with titanium rods. I went through a recovery process with that, and towards the end of the year, roughly end of December, I started chemotherapy with injections of small amounts of chemo, and I did that roughly January through March, and they saw success where the cancer was basically diminishing. However, it had not diminished enough to where they had hoped. And so they had pushed me on to, it did actually get better, but not to the point where I was anywhere near ready to go through a stem cell transplant, in which they would basically take some stem cells from my own body, screen them, and then re-inject them into my body, knowing that they were cancer-free. But to make a long story short, my cancer did get better. I ended up getting pushed on to the stem cell transplant team over in Dallas. And Dr. Vance is my doctor there, and he's been real good in regards to explaining everything and in the process. And I've gone through 2 heavy doses of chemo. The first one, I was only supposed to be in the hospital for 5 days. I ended up being in the hospital for nearly 8. And the cancer was greatly diminished, but still not enough to where they could actually do the stem cell. And so roughly a month and a half later, I ended up going through a second version of of chemo, and I ended up getting a lot sicker with the second version of chemo. I've never had the dry heaves and sick as in my life compared to what I was during that time frame. It's one thing when you're sick and something comes out when you throw up, but when you have the dry heaves and it just keeps coming and keeps coming, it's very painful. And but to make a long story short, I'm basically getting my body, as far as my strength, is very weak at this point, where it's difficult to stand up. It's difficult to walk any distances. I've had blood clots in my left leg that they've given me blood thinners for. But at this point, we're moving forward, and we're going to hopefully have the stem cell transplant tentatively somewhere near the end of August. And so right now, I'm at the point where this past week I've had a bone marrow biopsy, I've had an MRI, I've had a heart test, I've had a lung test, I've had kidney test. They've taken roughly 10 vials of my blood for all kinds of different tests to see what kind of, if I've had chicken pox and different diseases in my life. Evidently, they're able to take a blood sample of me and determine what diseases and sicknesses I've had in my life to know what they're going to be fighting when they actually do the stem cell transplant. So at this point, I'm just patiently waiting to find out the outcome. The bone marrow biopsy is where they actually go in, drill in, and actually find the blood plasma that's flowing inside your bone tissue. That is where the blood plasma is at. And when I initially had my first bone marrow biopsy, my blood plasma was 70% cancerous. The last time I had it done, roughly in April, the last bone marrow biopsy, it was down to 12% cancerous. So, I mean, it went a huge difference from 70 to 12. And hopefully we're praying that we be somewhere between 0 and 10% so we can proceed with the bone marrow biopsy. Because if it's not that low, then hopefully I don't have to, but it would probably mean more additional chemo treatments. I appreciate all my friends and family who have been praying for me. I've had people all over the world that have expressed on Facebook and different social media avenues on how they're lifting me up, praying for me, and hoping that it all goes well and such. But I just want to thank you all for your thoughts and prayers. And I'm not done with this battle yet, but hopefully we're on the upward side at this point to where things get better. I appreciate and love you all.